Fill her up.
You're listening to the Gas Digital Network.
With Rob Flynn.
What up? What up? What up, podcast party people? How you doing? How you living? How you feeling? It's a new year, baby. It's a new year. That's right. I think I did all my podcasts. Have I done a podcast? I don't know. I think I did an intro this year. But yeah, this is an intro. This is another intro for the new year. 2022 has your year starting out. Mine's starting out pretty good. Mine is starting out okay. I have been dry January. That means no boozing, no craft beers, no stouts, no vodka and Baileys. Yeah, dry January. I've done this a couple years in a row, and I'm kind of digging it, man. I'm kind of digging the dry January. December, I think I talked about this last week, but who cares? December is always like, fuck, my wife's birthday, our anniversary, Christmas, New Year's, it's like, doesn't stop. So it's always good to just, you take that 1 month. I know some people do sober October, which I think is insane. Fucking October? Come on now. Halloween? October's a raging. That's a month to rage in. That's all I'm saying. That's just, you want to rage in that month. But yes, dry January I can hang with. I can hang with some dry January. It's like you're detoxing, you're preparing fresh for the year, fresh start. I like it. So, I'm 3 weeks into that. And what's today? Yeah, 3 weeks into it. So I'm feeling good, man. I thought I'd be working out more. Fortunately, I shouldn't say unfortunately. Fortunately, I've been finishing the record. And I'm lucky enough that I get to finish my record that people still give a shit about. As I turn into a fucking ancient dinosaur here. And, yeah, it's been fucking dude. The last week has just been fucking insanity. Like starting last Monday and going, it just didn't stop. It was the most intense week of a lot of weeks. I was actually glad I was sober, and I tend to get sober when I'm recording. But we were recording this record over such a long period of time that anyway, I'm glad it's fucking between mixing and mastering and finishing the album, just like fucking. I slept good last night for the first time in forever. Jesus. I'm having to listen to mixes, and my guy, Colin and Chris, are mixing in the UK, and, they're 8 hours ahead, so I got to get up in the middle of the night to listen to these mixes and then give them notes and improve it, and I got to listen in my car. Like, I got to listen loud when I listen to Machine Head. I have to listen to it loud. And, I got a bunch of old people in my neighborhood, and I got a 70-year-old couple across the street from me. Like, I don't want to be blasting my music at fucking 3 a.m. in front of my house in my car. So I've been driving over to Safeway, which is like the grocery store just right down the way. And I've been sitting in the Safeway parking lot at 3 a.m, just cranking fucking new Machine Head tracks, and listening to them, writing down little notes in my fucking email that I'm getting ready to. Oh my God. I'm just like, and I tell you what, especially on the Friday and Saturday when I did it, like, you do not even know. It was crazy. 4 in the morning was crazy both nights. There was so many people out. Fucking dudes coming up, and they couldn't really, I was kind of parked behind this retaining wall, so people couldn't really see me. They're coming up, they're fucking hanging out at the gas station. They're hanging out at the gas station at 4 a.m. for 25 minutes, talking, and I'm like, what the fuck are you doing at a gas station having a conversation at 4:30 in the morning? Just craziness. And then And then and then there was like a bunch of like teenagers came, and they were like all on these motorized bicycles. So it was like a bicycle, but it had a motor on it that moved around. And they were just fucking thrashing, like picking up all the fucking cones and throwing the cones. Oh my God, it was fucking wild. And anyway, so it was quite eye opening to learn what is going on in my neighborhood at 4:30 in the fucking morning. Not that I had, not that I wasn't wiling out back in the day, but it was just surprising. It was just surprising. But got the masters back. The masters are sounding fucking awesome. Record's fucking ripping. It is colossal. It's a fucking, Colin Richardson called it a career milestone for us, and it meant a lot hearing that. And I really feel like we had a lot to deliver. We had to deliver an album for the ages, and I feel like we did. And so yeah, so it's been cool. It's been cool, man. Fucking say, all you news aggregators, don't pick up on this fucking sitting in the parking lot story. like I'm some fucking crackhead. Fuck. What we do for metal, man. What we do for the metal. I was fucking crap. I'm fucking sitting there I'm fucking emailing with my engineers. I'm just like, I'm in a fucking grocery store parking lot. What the fuck is the matter with me? It's the only place I could crank it. Anyway, done. Turned out great. Colin and Chris did a phenomenal job. Oh my God. It is fucking phenomenal. It is such a fucking, it is a metal production milestone is what it is. Like, it's seriously fucking savage. And yeah, I'm stoked, man. What else has been going on? We're going to resume happy hours here. Electric happy hours will resume this week for the first time in a couple of weeks. We had to take off those couple of weeks, man. We had to wrap up the record. And I just needed a break. We did 45 happy hours last year. It's a fucking lot of happy hours, man. That is a lot of happy hours. So it's cool. Digging them back on Twitch. We were back on Twitch yesterday, fucking rehearsing. We were running through. I was listening to. I've been working out. Whenever I work out in my garage, I just play music, and I played. What is it called? I just brain farted on what the name is. River Runs Red by Life of Agony the other day. Oh my God, that record is so fucking good. It's so good. So many great songs on there. Fucking top to bottom, man. I don't think there's a bad song on there. Like, it's just fucking all killer, no filler. Yeah, great shit. Killer riffs, great singing by Keith / Mina. Yeah, Joey Z bringing the riffs. Joey Z. And, yeah, so I was like, I put a post about it on my Instagram. I was like, I got a great response. People were like, oh my God, I love this record. And I was like, maybe we should cover This Time for the happy hour. This time. Now that you've gone and put the bottle away, now you start a new life with your new wife. So we're going to cover it. We ran through it yesterday. Jared was just like, fucking thumbs up, let's do it. He loves that record. I guess that was one of his jams back in the day. So I was like, fuck it, let's do it. So yeah, this happy hour, running through This Time by Life of Agony. I think we got Zach on board to cover Holy Wars, and then it'll be the regular cavalcade of Machine Head hits. We're a no-hit wonder, but we got some hits, motherfucker. We got some hits. Some thrash hits. So yeah. Yesterday, shout out to Twitch too. Twitch has been putting me on the front page lately. Normally I get like 200-300 people. Now I'm getting like 2,000 people watching me play This Time by Life of Agony for the first time in fucking 20 years and butchering it really badly. But it's been cool. It's been really it's been cool. Twitch has been really backing me, and I just made partners, so they're like fucking really just pushing the shit out of my channel, which is awesome. So there's that. What else has been going on? My son just had his 14th birthday. My dad just had his my son just had his 15th birthday. My dad just had his 85th birthday. And those are back to back, so Thursday and Friday. And my dad, when he turned 80 years old, my dad was like, I want to go on the hardest hike. Me and my dad always hike. Every time he comes over, we hike, or if I go there, we hike. And he was like, I want to go on the hardest hike that you got. Toughest one. It's like, the toughest one? I was like, I got a pretty gnarly hike, dude. It's pretty sick. You know, it's like 1.5 miles straight up, 3-mile hike. And not straight up, but, you know, it's a fucking tough hike. And he was like, let's do it. I was like, okay. So we did it on his 80th birthday, and now we hit his 85th. He's like, I want to do that tough hike again. Yeah, I was like, yeah? I was like, okay. No. But this time, we went this time, and he did great. I mean, fucking, he didn't want to stop. He was just like, kept going, but he was like, he got to the top, and he was like, this is about as much of a hike as I want to do. I was like, yeah, dude. I was like, this is about as much of a hike as I want to do, and I'm 30 years younger than you. So, but it was good. I mean, fuck, I hope when I'm 85, if I make it to 85, I hope that I am still doing fucking brutal hikes and kicking ass. You know, he's in good shape, man. He's strong still. You know, you hug him and he's like fucking solid. You know, sometimes you hug older people and they're very frail. Most 85-year-olds that I would hug would feel very frail, but he's fucking tough. He's tough. I'm going to try and get him on the podcast. I think he'd be awesome on the podcast. If I can get him to stay, he kind of tends to go from subject to subject. Like, I can get him to kind of stay focused on his life story. My dad's got the craziest fucking life story. It's insane. You know, I grew up in fucking trailer park. In fact, I grew up 3 blocks away from the trailer park that he grew up in. And, you know, we used to walk by that trailer park, and I'd be like, wow. Like, we were poor. We lived in a pretty white trash neighborhood, but I was like, we're not that poor. Fucking, that shit's fucking poor. He grew up fucking aluminum shed, 5 people in a tiny aluminum, like, little trailer shed. No, you know, there wasn't enough beds. The kitchen table folded down into a little mattress for him and his brother, and no toilet. They had to shit in a bucket and then carry it and dump it in a hole. I'm fucking crazy. It's insane. So anyway, but he did it, man. He did a fucking awesome hike. Came through and then spent the night and woke up the next day, and you know, he ended up leaving because he wasn't feeling good. He had some kind of diarrhea or something going on, and you know, but then it was Wyatt's birthday, so we hung out with Wyatt, and Wyatt had his big paintball party the next day, and that was cool. That was cool watching him. Him and his friends went out and they did a big old paintball team thing. It was cool. But yeah, so birthday mania. And, you know, I worry about my dad. You know, sometimes I see him coming down the stairs and he's like fucking really, you know, fuck. You're like worried, right? Like he just doesn't seem steady walking down the stairs. I'm like, fuck. You know, I think he's going to live for a long time, but you know, you can start to see it. You know, like I've never really seen it too much until the last couple of years where you're like, you know, you probably shouldn't be driving soon. You know, like motor skills are getting a little slow, and you know, he's going to be the guy. Oh my God, he's going to put up the biggest fight to not drive, you know, just be trapped. Like, and I get it. Like, I fucking totally get it. Like, who wants to do that? But, you know, it's going to come. That day is going to come probably sooner than later. You know, and I just don't want him to hurt himself or hurt somebody or crash or fucking, you know. You know, you start worrying about your parents when they get to that. When they get to 85, like you start worrying. You know, like you just worry. Like I'm worried all the time about him. Fucking Christ. You know, like I just don't. You know, he's such a stubborn dude. He's like, I'm fucking tough. I can do it, and he is tough. And I'm like, you can do it, but like, just be fucking careful. Extra careful. Anyway, though, it was good having him over. Good spending the night, and then Wyatt had his thing, and it was cool. And yeah, but it's been a very productive couple of weeks here, man. The first 2 weeks of 2022 have been just jam packed, slammed busy. Had a meeting with the record label today, like fucking just talking about the setup for the record, and starting to get excited, man. Starting to get excited. Got a great guest. Super cool dude. You know, I know some of you may not be fans of this dude. You know, I am a fan of him and the band. I'm actually not going to play. I know that this is going to get copyright strikes. I'm not even going to fucking deal with it. So I'm not even going to play the songs, but they got some great songs, and I highly recommend checking out the record called, what is it called? Oh, The Wretched and Divine. That record is killer, dude. There's so many good songs on there. The song, Let Shadows Die is fucking, I love that song. So, yeah, but they got a bunch of great stuff. I'd play it, but I know it's going to get copyright strike, and I just don't want to fucking deal with it, man. Like we've had a couple of copyright strikes on the last tracks, and it's just been a fucking mess, dude. It's pain in the ass. Such a pain. Got to fucking recut it and then fucking edit it, and then it doesn't end up in certain countries, and it's a pain in the dick. So, but I highly recommend check out all their stuff, but check out Wretched and Divine. That's a fucking banger. And the song Shadows Die is a banger. And We Don't Belong Here. We Don't Belong Here is a fucking banger. Anthem. Cool shit. Yeah, man. This guy tells some great stories. He tells some great... Why am I... Edit this out, G-Mike. I'm not exactly sure what I'm brain farting on the singer's name for fucking Black Veil. Andy BIERSACK. That's it. Jesus. There it is. Fucking guy. I remembered it before I fucking had to look it up. Not that old. Andy BIERSACK is this motherfucker's got 2 million followers on Instagram. I was like, 2 million followers? Jesus. I got 200,000 followers. I felt like I had a lot. Like fucking, he's got 2 million followers. I'd imagine 90% of which are girls, because he's kind of a heartthrob. He is. He's a good-looking kid. I could see why there's so many girls. I was just like, I'll never have that many followers in my life. Probably. I don't even care. I don't even post that much. But yeah, probably the closest thing I've had to like a pop star on my podcast. It was kind of cool. I was like, wow. You know, I'm often curious too, like the relation between the number of Instagram followers and the number of, you know, streams you get or record sales you get, or, you know, sometimes I think it's very, you know, I don't know what it is. I don't know how it works. I don't know if there's a correlation. I think sometimes people just follow you, even if they don't listen to your music that much. Who knows? Who fucking knows? Anyway, it was a great guest, and I think you guys are going to enjoy this interview. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the mighty Andy BIERSACK. Andy BIERSACK, how you doing, man?
I'm doing fine. I'm doing well. I just got off tour, so I'm back home trying to assimilate before the holidays. How you doing?
Congratulations on that, man. That's pretty awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, it was nice to be able to, you know, for us, it was kind of an interesting thing because we had we made the record, and then we fortunately had a tour that was already in place that had been rescheduled to essentially the same time as when the record came out. So while everything has been super weird and the world has been super weird, we went on tour. We're on tour for about a month, put out a record while we were on tour, did another month. Now we're home, and then we're going to go. Like, it's the most normal touring cycle as far as like timeline for us. But, everything else has been kind of insane.
That's right. So nobody got COVID. No, I didn't see anything about a cancellation or anything.
Would that I could say that. Unfortunately, our drummer got COVID, so we had to miss 2 shows, and then we did 3 shows acoustic without him, and then he joined back up with the tour.
Wow. Okay. Crazy. I did see some pictures of you guys doing acoustic. I just assumed that was like part of your set or something.
No, we essentially what happened was it was actually pretty early in the tour. Like, it was maybe 4 shows in, and the thing is, like, for us, we had been kind of inactive for a couple of years, and then of course pandemic happens, we can't tour, so we're at that, like you're back on tour, you're kicking ass, you're like, man, we are on fire every night, and then this happens, and it was just like Cece, our drummer, was so upset, and obviously, like, for him, he's vaccinated, he was able to get through it and not be too ill, and he was, we wound up being stuck in a hotel right on the college campus of UT, I think that's in Lubbock. And so we were just like, I remember I knew every item in that Walmart, like backwards and forwards, because that was the only thing to do, right? So we would walk to the Walmart and then back to the hotel and then to the Walmart while we were trying to figure out what was going to happen. And then somebody at some point, talking to our manager, Blasco, we were like, well, what can we do? And the idea came up, why don't we try to do a couple shows acoustic while he recovers? And it just so worked out that after 3 shows, he was able to be back with us.
Have you guys done that before? Have you done a full acoustic show in the past?
This was the first. So honestly, the only reason that we really could do it was because of the kind of like, I don't know what you want to call it, but like the pandemic presented the situation where like you have to figure out what to do. So one of the things that we were doing were these live streams, and then we were supporting a song at radio. So a lot of the radio stuff is like, oh, you go in studio and you do acoustic songs or whatever. And we had to learn basically our entire set acoustically because we'd be doing these virtual radio gigs for these different stations. And so we ended up in a situation where we went from the year prior being a band who had never done an acoustic show to this is a thing in our repertoire now. So we ended up being like, well, we know all those songs. Let's just put them together in a set. And I'd be lying if I didn't say that, it felt bizarre. Certainly when you're, particularly like if you're in these big venues and you got thousands of people and you're coming out and sitting on a stool and be like, hey, we're going to plinky plink for you for an hour. Like it's certainly not the same level of fun, but I think for like, especially diehard fans, we made a pointed thing of like, we're going to play songs that we haven't played live before because they are able to be done in this style. And it was fun. I think every night we would kind of look at our watch, so to speak, before the show and be like, when's CC going to get back? Like, let's get back to rocking.
Right. I think that it's awesome that you did that, man. I started doing some acoustic shit right when the pandemic hit. We were scheduled to go on tour. We were on tour, and then the pandemic hit, and we had to stop everything. Started doing these acoustic. I just called it acoustic happy hour. Just I'd drink beer and play acoustic songs on Facebook Live. And for me, who's really sang heavy almost my whole life, the idea of doing just clean vocals for 2 hours playing acoustic was terrifying. It took me, and I sucked for like the first 7 weeks. I was just like, I just got to do this. Like, I've just got to get through sucking in public.
I believe that is the secret to all performance or life in general, is to be okay with sucking for a little while until you figure it out.
Yeah. And then, I started taking vocal lessons and just got kind of better at it. And I think it's awesome that you guys did that, because it is such a, you got to figure out something in this crazy time to get through this.
Yeah. I mean, I'll ask you this question though, because this is one that maybe is specific to a conversation that can be had with people that have heavy songs with heavy vocals trying to do them acoustic. For us, there were certain parts where when we were going through them and trying to like figure out how do we make these songs acoustic, there would be times where I would feel like a vocal from me would just be jokey because like it's like a screaming part or something, and I'm like, do I sing that? Do I?
Right.
Totally. And I remember there was one where like, and this is hyper embarrassing to admit, but there was I tried it in a rehearsal where I tried like dramatically talking the screaming line, and it was like Vincent Price voice, like not cool at all. But so I wound up ditching that pretty quickly.
You went like full Thriller, like Vincent
Yeah,
Price.
I was like, well, maybe if I Vincent Price this, which by the way is never a sentence you want to say in regards to a song. You never want to go full Vincent Price in a song.
This is just like you just try it live for the first time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're just like, and then you like as you're doing it, you're like, oh my god, this is so not working. Right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. But that's like, especially because we had done one show in Mexico City, and when we were in Mexico City, there was one case of COVID, and it was one of those like, oh, what's gonna happen? I remember like my mother-in-law texting me before we left, like, be really careful. My mom was hitting me up, like the whole family kind of like,
right,
hey,
right.
we know you're going on tour. There's this thing we're seeing on the news. And I think what we did, like, you know, none of us knew. This is March 6th.
Right.
So we like, I think my drummer brought Clorox wipes and like we wore masks on the plane. And then for the we did a meet and greet where we wore gloves, but we didn't wear masks because we were told it was all about like the touching. So we had people like with us and we're just wearing gloves, but because like we were just, there was no information. So we did that show. Nobody got sick. Nobody got COVID from it. We go home, and I remember like everybody. I mean, I think I did listen to the 30 for 30 documentary series about this from ESPN, where like sports was like the first thing to go, right? So you're seeing basketball. They're walking off the court, and Rudy Gobert has COVID, and suddenly the dominoes start to fall, and I start making calls, going, "Hey, I'm supposed to leave in like 6 days, right?"
Right.
And I don't see how we're immune. If they can't do it, there's no way that we're like, you know what I mean? Like, there's no way that our thing's going to be immune. And, you know, not to blow anybody up, but I think a lot of the industry just was kind of in denial about it. Like, I had people that I work with who were very smart people who were going, this isn't going to affect us. You know, Kiss is still in Europe. They're doing huge numbers. It's all good.
Right.
And then it was just suddenly, never mind, you're staying home and we don't know for how long, we don't know anything. So that was that kind of thing where you go back to doing shows, and there's the like, I haven't gone 18 months without singing a song in front of people since I was 3 years old. You know what I mean? So like the going back to doing shows and going, hey, do I do this part this way? And then for 4 shows realizing like, no, I'm fucking that up every night. This is really bad. I need to figure this out. So like that was kind of the fun of the tour, was it was relearning and reappreciating a thing that has been so just part and parcel of life for my entire adult life.
Is it, you know, I've gone to a handful of shows, probably like 6 or 7 shows, you know, in the last 5 or 6 months or whatever. And some of them have been like crazy, you know, like just insane. And other shows that I've been to have just been like, I feel like people are still kind of in shock and like, is it cool to be here? Like just a weird vibe that I couldn't put my finger on. What is it like out there? Like, how was that tour for you? I mean, does any of that apply that I just said?
I'll tell you the truth. I mean, I think it's a case by case basis, and it really is about where you are in the country, and you know where, because every day it's different. One of the things about touring is, as you know, it's so once you're in that, like, you've been out for 2 weeks, what you're eating is pretty much the same. Time you're going to bed's about the same. While you're playing, you know, especially if you're on theater tours, by and large, most of the places are very similar. Your days have a level of sameness that becomes, you know, after 4 months can start to become a little monotonous. But there's that level of like you get in the pocket and you're just comfortable, right? Like, I know what it's going to look like today. I know what everything's going to be like. We're going to go do the day. This tour presented a new thing because you get to the venue and you find out, in this state, this is the restriction and this is the guideline and this is the way that the show goes. And in this state, you know, and when you're rolling through the country and every day there's a different set of restrictions and rules that are put together by the local government, the local officials, the promoters sometimes have their own kind of freestyle way that they're doing it. It unlike, you know, for us in theater tours, unlike arena tours where there is a very homogenized thing because it's dictated more by the artist, we're in a situation where we're rolling around and, you know, this old 3,000 capacity theater has this many restrictions, but then the next day, the same theater in a different state, same basic look and feel is entirely different. So there would be places where we'd play where, you know, there would be seating, and there'd be chairs that were put out and they would separate them. There would be days
to keep
where
the social distancing.
Yeah, and then there would be days, and I never saw this, but the band who was the opener on the tour, a band called Dead, they told us that when they came out some nights, the audience would have been seated 6 feet away from each other, and then somebody came out and said, okay, the show started, everybody can rush the stage area, but they would keep everybody separate. So all these kind of things that were local and different and bizarre kind of led to each show having its own kind of flavor. But the thing I will say is, I think I was a little shocked at how quickly you get past some of the stuff that's different and how eventually you're just on tour. You know what I mean? And then you're just rolling and rocking in the shows, or you have a great show, you have a medium show, you have a weird show. It just becomes the reality. But there is that like initial, what are we doing today? What's the rules today? You know, what is the, because we have our own within our camp, and we kept very close and in a bubble there. But then you get to the venue and there's this list of things and there's these kind of restrictions. So that was probably the chief difference of this to any other tour.
Do you guys bring people in, like if you're going to a town, you've got friends that under any normal circumstance, you would totally bring backstage and hang out? Like, what is the protocol with that? Like, are you in a bubble? Or
yeah, we had none of that. There was no visitors backstage, nobody on the bus. It was essentially, the situation was, if you on a day off went to, say, you know, we had days that were routed into, we happened to be close to home, so a few of us went to our homes or whatever. If those days happen, test before you go there, test when you leave, test when you get back, isolate when you get back. Like, we really, especially, you know, because we were being what we thought was really strict, and then obviously Cece got sick, some people in this moment camp got sick, and so it became, from that point out, we've got to really tighten up even more than we thought. And in that regard, there really wasn't any, you know, I think I saw, for instance, like my family, like I saw my parents, they came to a handful of shows, and they would park their car near Bus World, and I'd roll their window down and I'd talk to them from outside their car. Hey, you know, hopefully you enjoyed the show, that kind of thing. So it really was a very different situation in that way. But I'll tell you this, with the exception of the family and a closeness, I'm not really a social person. Like, I don't love hanging out a lot. Like, it's not really my thing. So in many ways, and this is going to sound very curmudgeon-y, the idea that there was a mandate that I don't have to say, yeah, come on down, was fucking fantastic.
Right.
If you give me a mandate that says you don't got to hang out with anybody, that is a dream come true for me, because my favorite situation is just being completely, because on tour, you know, like I don't drink, I don't party. You know, I'm sober. I have been for 7 years. I try to be very healthy on tour. I used to get sick. Like, you know, you get sick as a vocalist, it's done, right? You're canceling shows. It's impossible. So I wanted to get through this 90 days of like, I'm not getting sick. I'm going to bed early. I'm waking up early. I'm going to try to exercise, eat well, you know, be able to be constantly in communication with my wife and helping out with stuff and all these other things that I'd like to do, because I want to keep my life as normal as it can be. And to not have to also go, and all the reps from that company that you don't work with anymore but used to work with, and they were really nice guys, get to come around and say hello to everybody. Like, not having to deal with that kind of like tangential friendship thing was, again, it's going to sound very grumpy, but was a nice thing, because you could just focus on the shows and the task at hand.
Yeah. And there's so many, like, I mean, I'm sure that you've experienced this so many times. Like, once you get successful, like, just out of the woodwork, everyone wants to hang out and talk, and next thing you know, you've got a dressing room with 20 people that you have no idea who they are, and you're just like, you're like, okay, this is fun, but like, who the fuck is this? Like, what the fuck am I doing? I don't even know this person. I've been talking to him for a half an hour.
You
like,
get to the point where the person that vouches for the person is another person that you don't know. You're like, who's this guy? And they're like, oh, that's Larry. And you're like, well, I don't know who the fuck you are. Who's Larry? So that is, I mean, for me, a big part of the sycophants and the woodworks and whatever you want to call them, I made a pretty concerted effort by like 25, 26 to just go, I'm done with all that, because I was so young when we started the band. And, you know, when you're 20 years old and you're on tour and everybody's telling you you're great, it's very easy to allow a large number of people who suck to be around you and not realize how much they suck, because you're like, oh, these people, certainly they have my best interests in mind. They're not trying to leech off of me in any way.
Right.
And once you realize, like, oh, even at my small level of like minor fame, there's just people who want it in. And, you know, living in Los Angeles is its own hell. And there's just all this kind of stuff that brings in people that maybe don't want the best for you. So for me at this point in my life, I have like a circle of like 4 people I talk to, and the rest are just kind of like either tangentially like a hello in the parking lot of like Warped Tour type of person, or like, you know, it's just not really part of my life. I've tried to maybe to a large degree excise the kind of people who maybe didn't want what was best for me in my life.
Yeah, good for you, man. Good for you. I'm really impressed that you've been sober for 7 years. You're only 31, right?
Yeah, I turned 31 in a couple days.
Yeah. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
That's crazy. Like, you've been sober for 6 or 7 years and you're only 30 years old right now. That's
yeah. I mean, part of
you
it
got
was
sober at 23 or 24 or something.
Yeah. I think it was. Yeah. So maybe it was. I was 20. So yeah, it's been almost 6 years. So it'd be just about 6 years. Yeah.
Okay.
So. And before that, like I was dabbling, I'd go a tour without drinking, and then I'd have no, I'm going to drink. And then, but fully for at least just about 6 years, if not more. My math is terrible. There's a reason why I dropped out of high school and started a rock band instead of finishing. So anybody who's watching this is like, no, I know what the real number is. It's all good. I'm probably wrong. You're probably right. Anyway, it was just one of those situations where I was so young, and all I wanted in the world was to be in a rock band and to go on tour and to get to do this thing that I had this dream to do. And I didn't really socialize much growing up. Basically, my childhood was I'd play sports, and then I'd come home and I'd paint my face and I'd sing into the mirror. And then I'd go to hockey practice or whatever, and then I'd come back and paint my face and sing into a mirror and dream of drawing and making costumes. And so because of that, there wasn't really much time for friends. Like, I was just kind of a loner kid. And I never really built like friendships. I didn't know how to act around other people. And then, you know, I'm touring regionally in a car, or things are happening and we go play a basement to 5 people. Well, that's 5 more people than I thought were going to be there. And they all say, hey, you're the shit. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I am the shit. And you're 22. You must know everything about the world, you know? And so as it happened, being so young and then heading into a career in music, I started kind of piecing together a personality based on these other people that I was around. And everybody in the bands were older than me, and everybody would go on tour with older than me. And I just saw them as they know what their life is. This is what you do. You gotta party hard, you gotta be crazy, and you gotta cultivate this personality. And it just became like, by the time I'm like 21, 22, I've just got this weird like suit of armor that I've made of like this thing that I read somebody say in an interview, and this thing that, you know, this aesthetic choice that somebody made, and like all this stuff that I'm kind of taking and making it into whatever my thing is. And by the time I hit my mid-20s, you know, I was just kind of over it. You know, I'd spent so much time trying to be this character that I had created in my mind and trying to portray this thing. And, you know, we've gotten so much shit from the day that we started from so many people, and it made me so mad and angry, and I wanted to defend myself and defend my band. And more importantly, as a kid who came from a small town of modest means, who just wanted to be around other people who liked the same shit as me, I felt this sense of responsibility to our audience to like be the guy who will stand up for them and fight against people that talk shit about the band. And I still do, but the way that I was doing it at that age was, you know, I'd get really drunk and we'd play like 3 songs and I'd spend the rest of the show trying to fight people. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't necessarily healthy. And then I would feel down, and so I'd go to a hotel room and drink by myself, and then try to write songs and just like spinning out. And it just got to the point where I didn't have an addiction so much as it was just a crutch. Like, it was, I'm doing this because I'm socially awkward and don't know who I am, and this gives me a personality and makes me feel better about like being outgoing and being this person that I want to be. And then it became, well, I have to do that. And then we'd make records. And, you know, the first major label record we made, the producer told me that I sounded better when I was drinking. So
wow.
I'm 20 years old, not even legally allowed to drink. And I'm being told by an A-list producer on my first major label record, you sound better when you're drunk, so you should get drunk before you track vocals. So then I'm like, well, I guess I got to do this.
Wow.
You know, and so it just became this kind of self-fulfilling thing. And then, my wife is also a musician, and she is somebody who had dealt with similar things. She started really young and had a very similar trajectory in terms of her life. And we both were just like, we just got to cut this shit out. And we just did it together. And now, it's been the same amount of time for both of us, and we're exponentially happier and healthier people than we've ever been.
That's awesome. I mean, dude, you're very, I'd almost say you've been to therapy for the last 6 years or something, because you're so in touch with, so many layers of what you were and what you could see you were doing. Now, looking back, you can see what you were doing.
I told you I spent a lot of time alone, man. So you got a lot of time to think about yourself.
Right. No, that's good for you, man. So I wish I would have figured that out at your age.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, people say that, and I'm like, what the fuck was I saying? What do you want? Like, if I'm like, yeah, I got really drunk all the time and toured the world and did drugs and played in stadiums opening for my heroes, and then I decided to stop, like, what more was I supposed to get out of that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, people are like, oh, you're so young to do it. I remember when I first said to people, like, I'm not going to drink anymore, and I'm kind of going in this path. People are like, oh, you're so young. Like, you gotta live when you're young. And I'm like, do I? Like, I feel like I did it, right? Like, I did that shit. Like, now let's not have everything hurt and look like shit every day for the rest of my 20s. Let's enjoy this part of my life.
I was watching your fan first Revolver interview, which I thought was great, by the way. It was awesome. I love the discovering your dad's Kiss cards story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you mind sharing that again? I just think it's such a cool story. Yeah.
So the first house that my parents got was a small house, and it had, like every house in the Midwest, the scariest little sub basement in the world. And I was a kid who was terrified and fascinated, like many of us who are into like darker, heavier things. You have that fascination with it when you're little, and I was like scared of all this stuff, but then I'd also be like, oh, I'm gonna, it's daytime, so I can go down there. So I go down there and I'm rifling through boxes and stuff.
You're pretty young too, right? You're like 3 or 4 or something.
Oh yeah, I think at the most I was 4 years old, because this is before the reunion tour, which happened in '96. So, and by then I was full blown Kiss. So let's do a timeline here. I would have been 4 years old on Halloween of '95. That's when they did the acoustic unplugged MTV show, and I saw that in real time with my dad and knew the song. So it had to have happened prior to that. So I find this box full of trading cards that I have no idea what the fuck they are, and other than this looks like a bunch of superheroes holding instruments. You know what I mean? Like, what the hell is this? And at that point, my experience with music was like every little, toddler. It's just whatever's on the radio and you sing along to a song. And like, I think when I was that age, my favorite song was probably like Seal Kiss from a Rose, because it was part of the Batman soundtrack. Like, I was like a little kid singing along to that and being like, that's Batman. You know what I mean? Like, that
song represents Batman.
Exactly. Yes. There's no point of reference other than I think I had seen the music video for that, and that was a soundtrack song. So Batman was in that. So I thought Batman is Seal, or Seal is Batman. And actually, sidebar on that, I asked for that CD single for like my birthday or something, assuming that it was Batman oriented music, only to be very disappointed to get it and find out that the other song on the CD single didn't have anything to do with Batman, and none of the art was Batman related. Very disappointing. So I was interested in music, but I didn't have a point of
Seal. Isn't it just shirtless Seal with like
shirtless Seal
billowing blouse,
sitting with his legs crossed with his head down. It's a black and white photo with a white background, and I was like, "What the shit? Like, come on, where's Kilmer, man?" Anyway, so I didn't really have a point of reference for music other than I knew that like every little kid, you're singing along to stuff. And I found this and went to my dad and was like, what is this? And we went to the local record store, and he got me a handful of cassettes, and we got like a bootleg VHS of In Makeup era. Cause this is before, there's no Kissologies. There's not there's obviously no YouTube. There's no reference point of like, how do you teach this little kid about this? So we found some like,
Kiss is unmasked at this point, right?
They are, without makeup. This is the same year that Revenge comes out. So, or a year after Revenge comes out. So that's their most recent release, and then they're in that kind of dead period before the reunion starts. So he gets me the Revenge cassette. I fall in love with Unholy, and then I fall in love with all the old Kiss songs from the catalog, and I just become just the most obsessed possible thing. Like I would every single day when I got home from school ask my dad to paint my face like Gene. I would tie a black t-shirt over my head in a top knot, and I would grab my little Fisher Price guitar, and I learned all the moves. I would literally, and he would, with a camcorder, I'd be like, film me. And I would do Deuce, I'd do all the songs, and I'd do all the moves to the camera, and then I'd watch it back and be like, oh, I'm not nailing it. Like this, I'm like 4 years old and trying to like, it's like game film. I'm trying to like evaluate my performance. And that was then the introduction to every other classic rock band. So then I'm getting into AC/DC and Aerosmith and finding all of that stuff. And then the pipeline to Wasp and Motley Crue and Aerosmith and Twisted Sister and all that stuff is kind of there. And then the other kind of divergent path is
your dad is kind of into like the glam rock.
But
Motley Crue,
more when he was younger, but as he got older, and the thing he was really into, and that kind of what was more formative for me on like I want to write songs part was he was into punk rock bands, and he was in punk rock. He sang in punk rock bands, so he was into bands like Stiff Little Fingers and Lords of the New Church and Misfits and the Damned and all that kind of stuff. So like that was
like a local punk rock band.
Yeah, and he toured regionally. He opened for Social Distortion. They opened for I think the Cars at CBGB's in New York. Like he had little moments
he opened for the Cars at CBGB's.
Yeah, I think
that's fucking cool.
There was some story about Rick Ocasek like wanting to sign them. The kind of like local band thing. But he was very talented and had a very cool swagger about him. And there was all these photos. Like my dad has like sleeve tattoos and everything. Like he's very much like a rock and roll guy. And I would look at pictures of him when I was a kid of like he would wear a priest collar on stage and all this stuff and like little things that later ended up being part of my repertoire. But he introduced me to all these punk bands, and it was this kind of combination of the theatricality of Kiss with the aggression of the Damned, but then also Dave Vanian looks like he could be in Kiss kind of. He's got the white face and the white, Stiff Baders and Lords of New Church, same sort of glammy shit. So like all that stuff was kind of this formative thing for me. And then that was kind of the basis for me being like, oh, I really want to get into stuff. And then my band that I discovered was, and my dad had opened for the Misfits, but he never really was a big fan because he opened for them in like the Earth AD era and he was into more melodic shit. So he was really unaware of like the early catalog. And so I went out and found Misfits records and introduced him to them, and we really got into it. And then it was like, we got our first computer. All I would do all day is wait for the pages to load. And I thought that they would go away because like as a kid, you have to understand, for anybody watching who's younger, suddenly you have this thing that has every photo you could ever want on it. And you've only ever had photos in your hand. So I thought I had to save every picture I found on the internet to the computer for me to ever see it again. So I would go through and I would search Misfits on Google and I would save every single picture that was on the Google search. And then I would try to find my spot the next day and save so we wound up, I fucked up the first computer we ever had because it had no memory instantly because it had 950 pictures of Jerry and all these other like the whole hard drive is just Misfits pictures. And that was it. I go, I want to be in a band that's like Kiss and Motley Crue and the Misfits and all that stuff combined. And that was the dream.
That's rad. That's so rad. I love that you're just such a, and you're so like OCD about it. Like I've got to save every picture. I'm never going to be able to see this again. That's funny. You also had like, wasn't one of your big inspirations a wrestler, like something from WCW?
Sting.
Yes.
WCW 1997.
Sting. That's right.
Yeah, let's go. I can show you his face right now. Here's his face.
Nice.
Yeah, that was a huge thing. And it was funny because it was like all this stuff was happening in pop culture kind of at the same time, where if you were a little kid who's interested in like the aesthetic of like a dude with long hair and makeup on, like there were a lot of options for me in 1997 to find that look. And so like Sting and The Undertaker, Kiss is back on tour in full makeup. There's all these kind of like various things that are happening in terms of art. The Batman movies are huge. Like there's all this stuff for me to be like fully invested as a little kid in like, I'm going to grow up and be a grown up who wears leather clothes every day of my life. And, and here I am today, 31, only wearing black clothes and leather jackets every day of my life, surrounded by action figures in a room that is lit like the Batcave.
Still wearing the makeup.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, the other thing is that my mom worked for a company called Elizabeth Arden when I was a little kid, and she was a makeup artist, and she would go to malls. And like when you go into like the department stores, there's the ladies who go like, I'll give you a makeover.
Right,
And
right.
then generally speaking, older ladies will go in and then they'll get a makeover for the day, whatever. That was what my mom did. And so she would bring me when I was a real little kid, and I would watch all this stuff, and I was fascinated by it because I wanted to look. It was never about like the glamour. I wanted to look like a monster, but I knew that I needed that stuff to like make it. So I would take her, like, we didn't have black grease paint or anything, so I'd take like her brown eyeshadow and like beige, like very 90s colors, like blue eyeshadow and brown lipstick, and I would try to do like crazy creature designs on my face with her makeup. It was just always like all that stuff was always around me, and it was and now the funny thing is, in so much of my career, there's always been the thing that's been said of like, man, well, maybe if they spent more time on doing music rather than spending so much time on their makeup, they'd be a good band. And I always want to say, no, here's what you don't understand. The makeup takes 5 minutes. The music takes forever. You just think we suck. It's not about the makeup.
Right.
It's just maybe we just aren't that good to you. Trust me, the makeup doesn't take any time at all. I've been doing that since I was a little kid. The music is what takes forever.
Right. It's especially when you're a young kid too. I mean, maybe not. This isn't for every kid, but I went crazy on makeup at one point. I was super into horror. I was Dracula. Like 6 months out of the year.
Of course.
I got a widow's peak, so I was just like white face. Everything, the fangs. I just walked around in makeup for no reason. It's like February. It's June. Like way.
I used to walk around in a bat suit like in the middle of the year in my neighborhood to like as a little kid. I'm like, oh, I'm Batman. I'm going to patrol for crime, and then I'd get like made fun of. And I remember this is an important lesson that my dad taught me as a little kid, and one that stuck with me was I now kind of as an adult I kind of refer to it as like the bubble that was my household. When I was little, my parents didn't care if I dressed up crazy. There was no limitations on me being creative. But it was explained to me that the world outside might not be that way. And that, and when I was a little kid, I remember my dad saying it to me, and I was really mad at him for saying it because he's like, well, you're dressed up as Batman right now. Like kids are probably going to make fun of you for that. You just got to not give a shit and be the person that you want to be and don't let them affect you. And I wanted him to like stand up and walk out of the house and go beat those kids up for me. But the reality of teaching me the lesson of, well, if you're happy with yourself, who gives a shit what they think?
Right.
And that was something that for my whole adolescence, I'm getting ready for school in the morning and I'm wearing an exact Alex from A Clockwork Orange outfit to go to school. And I'm going now knowing some other people might not find this as cool as me, but it doesn't fucking matter because I think it's awesome.
Dude, that is so. I did this at 13. I did the same fucking thing. Like literally, it's like the fucking eyeliner on the one eye. Like, the mascara, not the eyelash mascara.
Yep.
Yeah. That's too funny. I love that your dad said that too. Like, what a great thing to say. Like, what a fucking great parental piece of advice to give their son. My son is my youngest son Wyatt. He went through a phase where he was crazy about Buzz Lightyear. Everywhere we went, he had to have full Buzz Lightyear gear, the fucking jetpack. I mean, the whole he had to get in the guy, had to strap him into the car with the jetpack.
Sure.
We're going to pick up his older brother from school, and like he's walking to school every day for years, and I tell him like sometimes, and I kind of said a very similar thing to him. I was just like, look, dude, like, there's probably going to be some kids who make fun of you for doing this, but you know what? Don't worry about them. Like, just you be you, do your thing. Like, if that's what you want to wear, like, just wear it with pride and just like own it. Own it. And he would come in and he'd kind of walk in all like Buzz Lightyear, and then like the older kids would be walking by and like, "What's up, Buzz?" and like give him like knucks. And I was like, "See, like you own it, and like
works out if you own it." And that's, I mean, quite honestly, that's always been. I guess if there's one thing like in terms of messaging that we've always tried to have with our audience or as a band or just in general, the idea that you should be your biggest fan, that there is this sort of weird cultural deference that is paid of like, well, you can't be too egotistical. You got to be humble about everything. And at some point, that's fine and that's okay to be self-referential or whatever. But at some point, you got to go, you know what? I'm the shit. Like, I'm awesome and I like me and I don't care about what anybody else says.
And I'm not like other people.
Yeah, and that can get you, when I would go early in our career, I would say to Kerrang, I like every record that we've made more than I like any Led Zeppelin record. It wasn't because I obviously knew what I was doing in the sense that it was then the pull quote on the cover, but I also was saying I don't not love Led Zeppelin. I don't not love these monoliths and the things that came before, but they're not standing at ceremony for me. They're not getting out of the way so I can do something. If I don't believe that what I'm making for me is more important, then why the fuck am I making it?
Right.
And the same is applied to anybody in their life. If you don't leave your house thinking that you're the shit, then why is anybody else going to think that? Why in the world would anybody else take the stretch and go, that guy is fucking awesome, if you don't believe it yourself? And that is ultimately, it's not about not being kind. It's not about being egotistical or rude. It's just about an unabashed belief that you are worth being proud of. And that, I think, above everything else, is the thing that, has been extremely divisive with us, is that I don't really ever stop to say, well, we're just trying our best. Like, well, then fuck that. Like, why? No one else in the world is going to wait around for you to be your favorite band or your favorite person. So you might as well do it yourself.
Hey, everyone. I want to take a break from the interview for a second to give you a word from our sponsor, MartyrStore.net. Check this out. Cannibal Corpse frontman George CORPSEGRINDER Fisher, who has been a guest on NFR. Go back and check that episode out. It was a great one. Anyway, he's dropping his debut album February 25th. You can pre-order now at MartyrStore.net. The CORPSEGRINDER self-titled album features 10 brutal tracks plus a guest appearance from Eric Rutan. There are signed CDs, wall flags, hoodies, and even cassettes available now. Vinyl will be available in the summer. Use code ROBB, that's my name, ROBB, the ROBB, at checkout and save 10% off your order. MartyrStore.net, and remember to always respect the neck. All right, back to the show. And on that thought, I was at a Revolver Awards. I think I hosted, or I gave away an award or something.
Sure.
And you guys were there as well. And I want to say this is like 2011, 2012. It's a little hazy for me.
Are you going to mention when I threatened everyone in the audience to beat them up with the award, or is this a different one?
I think that was it.
Okay.
I think that was it. I remember Chris Jericho was there. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't remember which one this was.
There's two different instances where I know you were at an award show and presented, and then we had an acceptance speech that was went awry. But the first one was a Kerrang Awards, where it was very brief, where we won like Album of the Year, and I just said, we won, and I'm so sorry, so fuck you, and then left the stage.
Okay.
Then the next one, I believe, is the Revolver Golden Gods 2013, where famously I, as Chris Jericho described, turned heel. And gave a very aggressive acceptance speech. Is that the one you're referring to?
I remember it a little bit differently. Like I remember you came out and I was watching, and I just remember the crowd like instantly turning on you. Like it seemed like by the time you had reached the podium to just say anything, like the crowd, who the fuck, what the fuck? It was like a bunch of old, I don't even know what the fuck. The crowd was so fucking weird to me. I was like, what the fuck is it? And then they all started like instantly kind of and you were just like, I just remember your face just like, fuck you. Like you were just like, fuck you. And I was just like, all right, good for you, dude. Like that's that's literally the only fucking like fuck you. Like,
yeah. And well, I mean, that was one of those things where it's actually kind of funny because I got a bunch of shit from like the singer of Five Finger Death Punch posted something on Facebook about how I disrespected the metal community and all this stuff. And
I was just like, you know what? I was like, those people were being fucking dicks. Fuck them.
But that's the confusing thing, is that I never understood that perspective, because I'm going, well, I'm not. There was like this kind of like remade version of the narrative where like Lemmy was standing there and I was like shooting him in the eye. You know what I mean? Like there was, it was people that were waiting for Metallica to play, who then had to sit through this band that they absolutely loathe giving an acceptance speech on an award. So they were mad that we were there. They were mad that it was taking so long for the headline band to play of the night. Right. And I had an opportunity, because the reality was, Song was written about my grandfather who had died that year. We were really close. I had this speech prepared that I wanted to give about him. And once we walked down around the stage and they saw us, the shit already started. So, because we were in like a holding area, and I was like,
yes,
I'm not going to be able to give this speech that I want to give. And so it was just, I mean, we were there for like 5 minutes just in front of these people at the barricade before we ever got up on stage. So there was this level of anger that was growing in me. And then it just became not about the people there. It became growing up in Cincinnati and Northern Kentucky, getting shit thrown at me from dudes in pickup trucks while I'm just trying to walk down the street, getting in fights every day, getting kicked out of school for getting in fights, getting made fun of for the way I looked and what I liked and how I was. And it became like this singular mass of like everybody that had ever talked shit to me all in one moment. Just like my dam broke, and I was just like, here's the thing. And you know, the thing I regret about it is there are certain parts of what I said that were insensitive. I didn't mean to, like, I'm not trying to call people out for their weight or anything. It was just like, there was just something about that night where I was like, fuck you so much. And, you know, ultimately, the funny thing is we went and did a festival the next day, and there were people that were coming up to me going like, hey, it's the fuck you guy. Like there was like this whole career thing. And to this day,
that's what I took away from it. I was just like, oh, he's the fuck you guy. I was like, cool, you know, like
to this day, many bands,
because I was in the crowd when it happened, and I just remember looking at, I wasn't in the crowd, I was like kind of above, like whatever.
Yeah, there was the artist section.
I could see the whole thing like turn. You guys hadn't even approached, and I was like, what the fuck is the deal? I was like, this band's from LA. They represent. And, you know, like Motley Crue or Wasp or any of the million fucking, you know, bands of that ilk that came from there. This isn't like, what the fuck? Who's this? Like, this is crazy. You know, like it was.
But there was just such a, and to this day, the shocking thing is we've been around for so long, and you need only.
And you're like 21 or 22 at this point, right? Like you're.
Yeah. At that time, yeah. But to this day,
you're not going to carry yourself in some perfectly professional manner. Like if you get pissed, you're gonna get fucking pissed.
At the time, I didn't make apologies for having said it, and I still don't. I regret, the only thing I regret is like I could have handled it better, but again, the age, but I don't regret defending me or the band or saying fuck you to people who were being awful to me. And I think the thing that's shocking for people is we were a band that came from the internet era, right? So like people never heard about us until there was social media, right? And so we were so closely associated with, I can leave a comment on this Metal Sucks article about this band and they're never going to see it. It doesn't matter. That when we were there in person in front of them, the disconnect is, oh, I'm actually a human being. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not going to just let you do that to me. And that became so much of what our shows were about. Was we would go to festivals and like Download, the first time we played main stage at Download, I was like, I know what's going to happen, so I'm going to do it more than them. So we go out, I run to the end of the deck there at the stage, and I go, throw everything you have. I want to see if any of you can hit me. And so 60,000 people at Download throw everything they have, and I'm standing there with my ass out, mooning all these people, and bottles of piss and everything else are coming around us.
Right.
And then it became like every time we'd play a festival, I was on, before we sang a song, the show was more about, I'm going to show you that I don't give a shit about what you do. And that was good in the sense that it was galvanizing for us as a band. It was galvanizing for the audience, but it made it so we never really got to show that we were a good band, because we'd play these festivals and most of the set would be spent with me screaming at people or fighting with people or jumping in the crowd and trying to fight people. And that became the only reputation that we had. So I would say that I have no regret of being someone who defended who we are and what matters to us. But I'm very happy to be in a place in my life now where when people do that shit at shows now, I can kind of laugh about it more and just play the show. You know what I mean?
Does that still happen? Really? That happens still? Like people
come to your show? It doesn't. I would say it doesn't as much. We
a lot of money to spend to go troll somebody at a show.
Yeah, it's only really online. We just did Aftershock, and it was kind of a litmus test for us, because anytime that we had ever played before Metallica, it went terribly for us because the whole audience was mad. Well, we go out there and we're two bands before Metallica on main stage at Aftershock, and it went fucking great. Like, we had a huge reaction from the crowd. We came back out to watch Metallica, and when people saw us walk out on the catwalk area, fucking people in the crowd started cheering for us. Like, it was a full circle moment where we're like, oh, we can stand here and watch one of our favorite bands and not worry about people throwing shit at us while we're standing here. Do you know what I mean? Like, that was pretty significant. But if, I mean, you need only put our band name online somewhere and you'll get plenty of people that have never heard the band, have no idea what we're like, that just talk about how we're the worst shit that's ever existed. And people like yourself who have defended us, it has meant a lot, you know, to read like all those years ago when you talked about Wretched Divine and enjoying the record and not thinking that we were the shit stain on the asshole of the universe. You know what I mean? Like that has meant a lot because it's helped us go, we are able to continue to do this in a way where people that get it, and those who don't, it doesn't matter.
I always thought it was weird. I mean, I came up in a, you know, I'm older than you, and I came up in a, you know, I came up in the glam era. I came up in this crazy, amazing time, you know, like I happened to be growing up in the Bay Area. This little band called Metallica was just starting out, and they're opening for Raven at the Keystone Berkeley to 250 people, and I'm
Amazing.
going to see them, you know, like open this, you know, they're supporting, you know, Exodus is the opening band, you know, this is a tiny 400 cap club, but at the same time, you know, Too Fast for Love is coming out, and Shout at the Devil's coming out, and, you know, Under the Blade by Twisted Sister, and, you know, I loved all that shit, you know, to me, like the early Iron Maiden records are coming out, and they were, you know, like I don't know if I'd call them glammy, but it was like crazy striped spandex shirts and, you know, like bright red, you know, bullet belts. And so it was like, it was glammy, you know, like, and it was fucking cool. Like, I must have stared at the Shout at the Devil album cover for like 24 hours of my life because I was just like,
I mean,
this
look,
is the fucking coolest band I've ever
seen.
To
watch like the Run to the Hills music video and say like, oh, no, nobody's wearing a costume there. It's false. You know what I mean? Like, it's not true.
Totally. And, you know, so like when you guys came out, to me, I was just like, oh yeah, like this is like the new, you know, this is like the new Motley Crue or whatever. Like it wasn't such a stretch for, you know, I've always identified with bands that are more theatrical. I loved that you guys were theatrical. I saw pictures of you before I even heard you. So I was just like, oh wow, crazy. Like this is what's going on. All right. You know, and then I just dug into it and I was like, yeah, like fucking, you know.
I mean, I think the truth of the matter is there's certain, and it's kind of unexplainable. There's a certain thing where a narrative can start early in a band's career.
Is the narrative that you guys are you guys posers? Is that what the narrative is?
Yeah, or, you know, like any number of things. I mean, it's like, I would say it's under the umbrella of posers, right? Like it's often said that we're manufactured or we were put together by a major label or all these things that are untrue, but it doesn't matter because, and I'm going to say the truth of all of this, and this is really where this all stems from. It's because there is an inherent sexism in metal with rock fans. There is an inherent thing where if young girls like something, that means that it can't be cool because to them, young little girls aren't cool. And that is a fucking problem because every single band from Def Leppard to the Beatles to everything else, the way that it started was with young women seeing it and getting behind it and pushing it. And if people accepted the fact that there is an inherent bias within the gender system in metal music especially, where like dudes don't want to admit that they don't like that because little girls like that. And that's fucking lame. Like, why can't you enjoy something that a young girl likes? Like, how fucking... It's so ridiculous. So there are many bands, we're not the first one, but who get painted with a brush of being illegitimate because we had a young girl audience, which is something that is, I think, getting less and less because as you see, there's so many bands, whether that's Ginger or all these other very heavy bands who are coming out now who are immediately met with positivity. But there was certainly in 2010, 2011, there was so much of the, we're going to dog whistle this and we're not going to say what we mean. But I think that they're lame and we're going to use a bunch of homophobic expletives, but it's because they're not liked by dudes who look like me, which is inherently built into the idea that you're basing everything on aesthetics. You're making fun of me for putting on makeup and playing heavy music, but you are the only people that you like playing heavy music are ones that look like you because you've made your own aesthetic choice. So it is a kind of weird bias that exists, and I don't mean to get into a place where I'm talking specifically about that, but that fucking is real, and I'm happy to say I see that getting less and less. I mean, right now, my wife, Lilith Czar, she's on tour with Evanescence and Hailstorm, and arenas across America fucking killing it. And those are three female heavy artists who are doing heavy music for a lot of people, and it's not seen as illegitimate. Whereas when we started, there really was this fucking thing where oh, little girls like it and they're in Hot Topic, so they can't be cool. Well, sorry, but and again, I'm on a soapbox right now, but somebody's buying our fucking records. And maybe you're just buying it and listening to it by yourself and pretending that you don't like it, because
Right.
the t-shirt sales and the record sales certainly indicate that there's more people that like us than how many people are on this comment section, or Kerrang calling us the most hated band in the world. Do you know what I mean?
Wow, is that true?
The most hated band in the universe. We were on the cover of Kerrang once for that. They used to call us the Marmite test, which means that people either love or hate it. Marmite is like Vegemite. It's
Right,
that really salty, yeasty paste. So
Okay.
we've had many different monikers over the years, but it's all centered around this kind of lack of people actually understanding what they're saying. And what they're saying more often than not is, I actually don't know what this band is like. I don't want to appear lame, so I'm not going to say that I like them. And I'm not saying that if you listen to us, you would invariably enjoy our music, because I'm not saying like, well, you know what, if they just heard it, they'd love it. But I know for a fact that by and large, the people who are saying this stuff haven't heard the music in the first place.
Yeah. And you're kind of coming about in a time too when metal is by and large kind of got this, overly macho, kind of not glamorous at all, not, like, so like you stick out.
Yeah,
Like,
it would be.
We're gonna throw tomatoes at the thing that's sticking out because this is different than what is going on.
Well, because there was such an attempt to distance, because you've got two things going on in the early 2000s and mid 2000s. You've got the rise of emo music, which is like Bright Eyes and Dashboard Confessional and that kind of stuff. And then you've got kind of concurrently like the pop punk thing and then the offshoots of the pop punk thing. So then you've got those two things are kind of the dominant thing, and they're primarily listened to by young kids, and the metal community doesn't see any of themselves in it at all. Well, now, by the time you hit like 2005, 2006, there's all these kind of inflection points where you've got bands like Under Oath or other things who are like really heavy, but their aesthetics and their lyrics lean more into, the kind of emo stuff. So then there's a pushback there. And then by the time you get to when we come out, there is this wide net that has been cast of everything that has a t-shirt and Hot Topic is an emo band. And there's we're never going to discern what any of that means. But, I've seen people say things like, I don't like bands like All Time Low and Black Veil Brides. And I'm not being mean to All Time Low. They're an incredibly huge band, whatever. But I don't have anything against whether it's All Time Low or Pierce the Veil or any of these kind of this music. But if you listen to
really sound,
there's no through line musically at all. And you could be a fan of both bands. You could be a fan of Bright Eyes and Black Veil Brides. You could be a fan of whatever and whatever else. But to say, and we were so often grouped into these bands that we didn't sound anything like. And so we were kind of a band without a nation, because we didn't know where to tour. If we tried to open for metal bands, we would get things thrown at us the whole time. If we played with these pop punk bands that we were grouped in with, we were the heaviest thing in the world and not at all what they wanted to hear. Do you know what I mean? By contrast. So we've always kind of been this isolated artist that doesn't really have like a place. You know what I mean? Like we announced a tri-headline tour with Motionless in White and Ice Nine Kills.
Sick, dude. That's a fucking stacked bill.
Yes, and it's
Ice Nine. I love Ice Nine Kills.
But it's like the perfect.
So good.
It's the perfect kind of like, all three of our bands, we don't really sound completely alike. We don't all have the same level of theatricality, but there's something about the three of our bands that if you're a fan of one of them, you can make the jump to the other one. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so it feels like the kind of right place for us. But for a lot of our career, we didn't really have that. When we opened for Motley on a stadium tour, their audience fucking hated us. Hated us. Yes.
That's really surprising to me.
Because we don't play we don't play 3-chord songs about riding my Harley into a stripper's butt. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not there's technical stuff, and there's big guitar solos, and there's, really shreddy parts and breakdowns and screaming and drumming and all this stuff that is in front, just because we look this way in front of Motley Crue's crowd. They're like, why aren't your song about strippers? You know what I mean? Like that wasn't like, and so we just kind of always been this thing where we never really knew where to go with anything. And I think at this point now, there's enough of us who are kind of like that with Motionless and Ice Nine Kills and these other bands, where we've kind of created our own separate subgenre of whatever you want to call this.
Do you find that more dudes are coming to your shows now?
Yeah. And also the age range is wildly different because we started so long ago. Like if somebody was, I mean, you know this, you get to that point where your audience grows up with you, and you're like, nothing will make you feel older than when you're like, oh, it's somebody at a meet and greet. I was 12 years old when I first discovered you, and now I'm a doctor, and I've got a family, and here that, you know what I mean? So like
Right.
the reality of our audience who first discovered us 12 years ago are adults now. Many of them, their younger siblings have found us through them, or younger kids have found us online because of the aesthetics or whatever else. And then we've recently had success at rock radio. So an audience that never heard us before, of like older rock people, there's a 10-year-old kid with like the swoopy bangs and the black veil shirt. And then there's a family of 5 who've all got black veil shirts on, who are in their mid 20s. And then there's an old biker couple behind them who've got battle vests on. You know what I mean? Like it is a wide swath of people who, the older rock fans like us because of the association with the glam stuff and that kind of thing.
Right.
The fans who were around my age range, it's the nostalgia thing of their youth. And then the younger kids relate to, particularly the early lyrics, because I'm a 17-year-old writing these songs. If you're a 17-year-old, you can kind of get in on what I'm saying. So it's been cool to be able to be in a place where the audience is much more varied than it used to be.
I mean, you read what I said before, and I still feel exactly the same. I love the Wretched Divine. It is a fucking great record, man.
Thank you.
I was listening to that, just kind of refreshing on before I was talking to you, and Shadows Die is just fucking, dude. That is such a phenomenal song.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
But even like, We Don't Belong Here. To me, it's just such a fucking anthem. Like, it is a straight up, it's got every cheesy thing, but it's just done so goddamn good. It fucking works perfectly. And I'm just like,
and it's also a very John Feldman production. And that is, for us, like, that was the first song we wrote with Feldman. I had never met him before. We went to his house.
Okay.
And we were actually making a record with a different producer, and we had like 4 songs done. And I went to Feldman's house and we wrote that song. And, about midway through the day, we're working on it. And I called the guitar players. I go, you got to get over here because, like, I think he's like really gets what we want to do. And so they come over and we wrote that song and had the demo. And I literally, I listened to it for about 2 days and I went, I have to fire this other producer and hire this guy. Like, there's no way. Now that I know,
you were working with another producer or something?
We were working with another producer on a record. We were just like, we were kind of in the system, right? It was going to be our second major label record. They wanted us to make a record right away. Here's this guy who's got great credits. You're just going to go into the studio with him. We didn't have any material really. We were just writing as we go. Nothing felt inspiring. Nothing against the producer. He's a great guy, but we just didn't have anything that was like clicking. Now I've got this demo of Sean Bevan, who's a wonderful, wonderful guy. We've worked with him on other stuff. Subsequently, we worked with him for a song on the Avengers soundtrack. Like, really nice guy. It wasn't his fault.
At this time, it's just not connecting. Yeah.
It's just not going to work. And I had to go in the middle of drum tracking, and I'm listening to this demo.
Oh my God.
I'm driving to the studio.
Drums with Sean Bevan?
What's that? You're
tracking drums with Sean Bevan?
Yes.
Okay.
My drummer is in the room tracking drums. And I'm listening to this demo from, at the time, Feldman lived in Woodland Hills. I'm driving from Woodland Hills to North Hollywood. We're at the steakhouse. We're doing drums. And I'm almost there, and I'm just listening to this demo over and over and over again. And I'm going, this is the record we need to make. Like, we need to make whatever this is. Like, we need to make this album. And what we're doing right now is not a big enough leap to, like, make a dent in our career. And I had to go in and go, hey, Sean, you're awesome, man. Like, and he really is a wonderful person. Like, I'm not just trying to backtrack. Like, I genuinely mean, I really enjoyed working with him in our times, but there was just this special flavor that happened when I met Feldman, and we just connected so much that I had to, hey, buddy, so it's not going to work out,
I worked with John Feldman, and you're out.
Yeah, and so then he goes back in, and my drummer tells the story of, like, he's like, my drummer's like, all right, we ready? And he just goes, I just got fired, so you can leave if you want to. Brutal. Brutal, right? But you know, I'm 21 or about to turn 21 at the time, so like my tact is the only. I have blinders. I need to succeed. I need this to
Right.
work. This is what I
Yeah,
want to do.
there's no shame in this, you know,
Yeah.
like you're driven. This is like what you're rolling on, and like, but yeah, that's pretty rough.
So we go to Feldman, and then
I guess you
mean,
could have had your
ultimately,
manager. You could have had your manager do it, I guess.
yeah, but I mean, I've always been when it comes to, I have a really close relationship with Blasco, who's our manager, and he's like an older brother to me. He's been my manager since I was 17 years old.
Oh wow, this whole time, huh? That's
Been in
awesome.
my life since I was a kid. We talk every day. We work, you know, when it comes to the business of the band and the business of my career, we work hand in hand every day. But I've always been heavily interested in taking the onus for things and being someone who is accountable, even when I was young, of like, this is my business. I need to make sure that this is going the way it should go.
Right.
And I need to be involved. I've never been like, oh, let the management handle it. And, you know, and there are many times where it's more appropriate to defer to management and not step on anybody's toes. But even then, I like to still be involved to a degree that I'm around, you know. And we went to Feldman, made the record, and you know, it is the singular gold record that we have in our career. So I guess the decision was the correct one because we were able to succeed off of that record. And I think ultimately, Wretched Divine is the record that is the reason why we're still around and people know who we are and care about us because it got us to that next tier, you know.
I mean, it's almost kind of Operation Mindcrime level, like storytelling. You know, like it's got so many
Yeah.
of the little connecting themes, and you know, it's very cinematic in that sense, where you're kind of, you know, you're painting this picture of what the story is, and then it goes into the song, and you know, it's a hard thing to accomplish, man. Like it's a challenge for sure to make a story get told on a CD or on a, you know, streaming or whatever you want to do it, which is,
I have no idea how we did it. I honestly, like, when it comes to, I was involved in every single step, and I look back at being 21 years old, and I think we had like 3 months to make the thing, and like, it's amazing. I
to
mean,
write
I
and
don't,
record it. 3 months
yeah,
to write and
we
record.
were writing as we were recording,
Yeah,
song a
no,
day,
no
every
songs
single
written
day.
prior to coming into it.
We had riffs. We came in with riffs, but half the time Feldman would go, "No, we need to start over." So the song would start that day. Like,
Wow.
in the end, was the second song of the day that we had written because the first one sucked, so we threw it out at like 6 o'clock and then just started writing a new one, and then that became the biggest song we've ever done. So like, it was one of those things where it was just a lucky, crazy, magical situation that I would be a fool to be like, you know, like, as a Kiss fan, there's always the thing of like Gene and Paul are like, our next record's going to be as big as Destroyer, and you're like, well, no, it's not. But you know, like, I learned that lesson where Wretched Divine is a magical moment in our career that cemented our career and gave us this, and everything I have really and everything the band has is a result of that record working out the way it did and being as good as it is, and kind of giving us a career and a shot. You know, that's my friend Ryan Downey, who you've had on the show before, one of my best friends in the world.
It's
He
awesome.
always says that's our space capsule record, where if you had to represent what this band was and shoot it out into space and have an alien like listen to something, that's the record that represents what the band is.
Do you share an affinity for Adam and the Ants like Ryan Downey does?
Absolutely. And
Awesome.
we send each other back and forth Etsy things that are Adam and the Ants buttons and shirts and other things. I mean, I don't want to undersell this. I talked to Downey, my wife jokes because we're all friends, but she calls him my boyfriend because I text him all day, every single day we are texting each other. In fact, probably when we're done, I'll check my phone and there's at least 3 or 4 links to like Onion articles or some other stupid
Right.
bullshit.
Yeah, he's awesome. I love Ryan.
He's
I'm
the
a
best.
huge Adam and the Ants fan too. Like I fucking love Kings of the Wild Frontier, and you know,
Excellent.
Beat Me, you know, all those like B-sides that I fucking was crazy about that shit growing up. So when I had him on here, we went on like a full on like 25-minute Adam and the Ants.
Oh, he sent me the episode and said listen to the Adam and the Ants part, so I'm familiar with that whole section.
That's rad. That's rad. No, he's awesome. That's cool too. I mean, he's a good guy to, you know too. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
do you feel like he steers, you know, your career? I mean, he manages other bands too and stuff like that. Like, are you guys friends in that sense, or is it just like a friendship?
I wouldn't say that he steers anything. And it's more he is a collaborator. Do you know what I mean? Like he and I work on stuff together all the time. Like we just did a podcast documentary series about the record that Black Veil just made, and he hosted it and did all the interviews, and he and I built the whole thing together and made the artwork and all that stuff with Josh Bernstein, who's another one of our friends. Like we have this kind of pod of creatives where we work together and stuff. Downey and I wrote a book together that came out last year.
Your book is written with him?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, and truth be told, I tried to do it on my own, and he's just, and you know this because you know him, no one in the world is better at like data collection and remembering everything and having everything. And he had 10 years of interviews that he had done with me for various publications. Wow. And he had saved everything. So I'm kind of missing like this whole swath of time here. He had everything, and he could fill in gaps in my life that I didn't even remember because he had all of this stuff. And, you know, as close as we are, it was kind of the perfect situation. So, yeah, I mean, and we started working on another book idea, and every couple of days we have a new podcast idea. And like he and I are more collaborators than anything else, but he is the type of person who's got such a tremendous amount of knowledge about the industry that I do bounce stuff off of him all the time.
Yeah. How is writing a book? You know, like a lot of people ask me to write a book, and I'm just like,
it took for fucking ever. It took years.
I heard it takes a really. Scott Ian was just on here, and he was talking about, you know, his book and, you know, how long it took, and, you know, I was just like, do you ever have to deal with the, you know, you gotta piss some people off, like in your book at some point, like, you know, is there blowback from any of this? Or,
well, you know, it's kind of unique because with this one, it's not a memoir. It's because you know, at the time I'm writing it, I'm 27 when I start writing it. So like the idea was, I read all the Rockstar books, right? We all read those Rockstar books where the first like 3 chapters are, and in 1948, I went to buy ice cream for 5 cents. And you're like, this is so far away from any reality that we have now, that this is exceedingly boring and not interesting because I don't give a shit about how candy was a nickel when you were a little kid. Like, get to the 80s when you were a rock star. So, like, all that stuff is so disposable, and it feels so far in the rear view because it's not relatable now, that I felt like, what if I did the book that is my first 25 years with vignette stories, because it only happened 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 5 years ago, and it's still current and relatable to people who are reading it now, particularly my younger audience. And then later in life, I can write the memoir and, you know, tell all the stories and all the crazy shit. You know what I mean? But it's really about growing up and just having a dream and what that's like.
So it doesn't really go into Black Veil? Or
it does. We tell the story of originally the idea was not to go into Black Veil. The idea was to go up to it. And then it just became impossible. So it's really, it's about the beginnings of Black Veil and then a few stories here and there that lead up to now. But it's mostly growing up in a small town. The mission of the book, above everything else, is to explain to anybody reading it, to anybody who's a dedicated fan of mine or anybody else, that there's absolutely nothing remarkable about me. I don't have superpowers. There's nothing about me that's any better than anybody else. I worked really hard and got a little bit of luck. Here's how that happened, and you can do the same thing. I'm not that rock stars and the fantasy of rock stardom, that people aren't shit out of the sky by God to rock the earth. It's just, here's the shit, here's the steps, here's where I needed to work really hard, here's where I got a lucky break, here's how things worked out for me. Because so much of my audience, particularly the younger part of my audience, it feels like there's this barrier, like there's no entry point into this shit. Because a lot of dudes that get successful, there's this immediate pose that they have of like, and I am greater than you because I have X million Spotify listeners and therefore I'm the greatest. And it's fucking fake. And I want to be able to, at least as my position of having particularly people who listen to me or care about what I say, to explain it's just it's a little bit of luck and a lot of work. Like, that's all it is. There's nothing about me that's fucking like special. It's just everyone can do this if you care more than the person next to you and you do things that other people aren't willing to do.
Right. I mean, relocating to Los Angeles at 18 is a pretty big step. I mean,
and living in the back of my 98 Cadillac Eldorado.
That's an enormous step, you know, for a teenager. You're a teenager, you know.
Yeah, like, but I guess it was just a little bit of pretentiousness because I was like, well, this will work out. You know what I mean?
And that's the dream of so many people from the Midwest, you know, like Axl Rose, that you fucking name it, you know, like, but still, to me, it always blows me away that like somebody had the gumption to do that. Like it's such a fucking, it's one in a fucking billion that it'll work out.
It never occurred to me that those odds were there. Like I just never thought about it. It was just always full hubris. I'm gonna do this, and then someone says, "Oh, that's probably not gonna happen," and then I would say, "Well, you don't understand. I'm gonna do this," and then it was just always like that. I said like the horse with blinders thing. It was just I don't care what I have to do. This is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna drop out of school. I'm gonna have no other options. I'm gonna bust my ass. I'm gonna live in my fucking car. I'm going to eat old taquitos that they're about to throw away at 7-Eleven because I don't have any money. I'm going to shop only. I'll get $5 a week and buy white bread and American cheese slices and eat them in the back of this car. I will drive down to clubs and try to meet people that might be interested in similar music to mine. I will do anything I have to do and hustle every single day until this happens. And it's just about the work. I mean, honestly, that's all it is. I'm willing to do literally anything I have to do to make this happen, and nothing will get in the way, and I have no other options, and I have no backup plan. I've torn up my parachute, and I fucking have to make this happen. And, that's really, if it weren't for that, if I had other options, if I had an education, if I had these other situations that I could fall back on, I don't know that I would have been as like, nope, can't fail, got to keep doing it, can't fail. I have to tour in a car that's so small that my feet have to be put out the window, and I have to wear 6 pairs of socks in the winter because my feet will freeze otherwise. Fine, this has to work. Let's do all of it. Like anything I can do. And that is what it is. If there was one defining characteristic of success on any level, it is just being willing to do more than people think you should have to.
Lars Ulrich has a theory that one of the reasons that Metallica is so popular and that has this this deep connection with some of their records is that he thinks that half the audience lost their virginity to Master of Puppets.
Okay.
He's, and like the music that you lose your virginity to is like, that's what stays with you forever.
Okay.
Like, I lost
my virginity to something called Howie Day. I don't know what it is. To this day, I've never heard it. I was in the back. Ironically, it was a Cougar, the car. The girl, I say ironically because the girl was a senior in high school and I was a freshman. And
so she's older, like a cougar.
She drove a Cougar, and the worst thing I've ever heard in the world was playing, but it didn't matter because I was having sex for the first time. Right. And we get done, and I finally am coming back to earth, and I go, what is this, by the way? And she goes, Howie Day. And I've never looked it up. It just has stuck in my head for my whole life. I don't know what it is.
Howie Day is the name of the song or the name of the
Howie Day
person?
Might be the name of the song. It might have been, she might have been giving me some sort of colloquial, like, hello. I don't know what the fuck it is. Howie Day was what was said to me. So I don't know what it means.
Right. G Mike, look that up. We gotta play Howie Day in this segment, right?
In the Delhi, Ohio, in the Delhi Park, just parked with people walking all around in a car. In this tiny little fucking car. Had no idea
in the daytime.
In the fucking daytime.
Nice.
And this is what was said to me at one point was by this person. Guys tell me I have a really pretty vagina, that was such a intimidating.
That's what the girl said to you.
It was said to me. I was like, oh, okay. Like I didn't know what the fuck I was doing.
Right.
Anyway,
is this the first time you've ever seen a vagina?
What?
Is this the first time you've ever seen a vagina?
In person, yes.
Yeah, right. So you're just like, it's beautiful. Like
my only experience with naked women was on the Kiss Exposed VHS when they did the stripper song called Take It Off, and they had naked girls walking around. And my mom didn't want me to watch that part of the VHS, but my dad would let me watch the whole thing. And so that was it. And there's a scene in it where there's a woman who is like kind of a large, muscular woman, and she's got big, muscly boobs. And they call her the Crusher, and she's crushing beer cans with her boobs. And like as a little kid, like that was like, wow, people can do that. Like now as an adult, that's never a situation that's come up. I've never seen that again. But as a kid, I was certain that people were going around crushing beer cans with their boobs because that was my only experience.
Did Black Veil ever go through a stage where you brought? I remember a couple of bands from maybe the mid to 2000s like started bringing strippers up on stage. There was it seemed like a trend for a minute there. Did Black Veil ever go through that?
And we did one photo shoot for Revolver where they were like, I didn't know until we got there, where they were like, oh, it's in a bar, right? And we get to the bar, and then they've remade the bar into a strip club. and they're like,
Okay.
we're going to have strippers all around you. And I remember thinking like, we're going to look like fucking idiots in this. And lo and behold, we did look like fucking idiots because we are dressed in our own heels and lipstick and everything. Like it was just, the juxtaposition of the images didn't work. And so I don't think it was ever something. And also for me, like, it's just any part of that where I was like, oh, I got to be involved in this culture. It just really wasn't, it was all a pose. Like that, if you want to call me a poser, that is the most poser photo shoot we ever did because I'm like, oh, look at this. And I just look like a fucking nerd. Like it did not work out for me.
There was no Motley Crue era of Black Veil, like where it was just pure decadence backstage. You're coming off stage to a bathroom full of 10 naked, shiny women.
There was definitely an attempt to impress people with that idea, I think, more than the reality. There was a lot of, like, if there was any of that kind of stuff, it was always under the, like, I don't know, it just always made me kind of feel like hollow. Do you know what I mean? Like, it just never really, it wasn't my thing. And anytime I was involved in it or doing it, it just always felt like I was like pretending, you know what I mean? And like, it's not that I can't appreciate that kind of stuff for like the fun of it or if it's a good nature, but a lot of it is just so like, in retrospect, so much of that stuff is so predatory and crazy that it's like, it just always felt bizarre to me. And I really wanted to fit in and be like cool like that. And I think I tried to engage in that kind of stuff for that sake. But truth be told, like most of it's just fucking lame. Like if you like think about it outside the perspective of any of this, like watch like The Dirt or whatever. And I love Motley for what they are and everything, but it just feels like so fucking like try hard. Do you know what I mean? Like all of it is just so beyond. And for me, especially as I get older, I look back at some of that shit and I'm like, wait, like I used to wear a knee brace that Nikki had one that I did the same thing that said like Sleaze Patrol on it. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, come on, dude. You're like 19. What the fuck do you know? But I look back on it fondly, but by the same token, it was just like, I want to be like my heroes. I want to do the shit that they do,
Right. Or at least the stuff that your heroes told you they were doing.
Said that they did, yeah.
And doesn't necessarily mean that they were doing it. It's just that, I remember opening up Hit Parader magazine and, Nikki Sixx talking about, chicks sticking, champagne bottles up their ass. And I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. Was it happening?
Also the difference
Who knows
between
if it was
happening? Yeah, the difference between the timelines is so crazy that like, and I don't mean this to be, I'm not trying to make fun of anybody but it just shows you how wide the gap is between that era and the era that I came up in.
Right.
We opened for Motley. The first time we ever did was they used to do a thing called the Sunset Strip Music Festival, and they would shut down Sunset and they'd have bands play. Okay. And we played right before Motley, and it was the first time that we were meeting them. And Nikki, like, somebody got a hold of me and said Nikki really wanted to meet me and sit me down and talk to me. And I was really excited, and we sat down, and he was like really earnest and really kind, but giving me financial advice about what to do with your first million and all this shit. And I'm just like,
you're like, this is not the conversation I thought I was going to have.
I don't make any fucking money. Are you kidding me? Like, I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm a band in 2011. Like, we only have debt. Like, there's no, I won't see that maybe ever. You know what I mean? If I start saving right now, if I never spend another dollar and eat ever again, I'm never going to see that shit. So it's like, what their timeline was and the excess and the money and the girls and all that stuff versus like where I'm at in 2011 when I'm coming up, like the show is presenting something similar, but the reality is like we're pooling our money to get a bottle of Jack Daniels. Like it's not, our lives are very different. Like you see me as, at that time he sees we're on a major label, we got some hype, all this stuff. So the assumption is this is what my life was like in 1984. So he must be going through something similar. And in many ways, on an emotional level, certainly true, but on just a practical level, like the times had vastly changed by then. So our experience was just totally different,
Have you read the Rob Halford biography?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. It's really good.
That was one of my first, fuck it, I'm just going to read all these books during the pandemic thing. Like, I think Rob Halford's is one of I picked it up and I was like, all right, I'm going to read every rock biography because, there's endless time right now. So fuck, I'm going to go through all of them. I hadn't read. I did Adam Ants, which I had for years on the shelf, but never read. Billy Idol's I've read a few times. My favorite one, and this is going to sound...
You've read the Billy Idol one a few times. Wow.
I think at least 3 times. Yeah. But my favorite one, which I've now read 3 times, is Elton John's book. And I'm not a dedicated Elton John fan. I didn't know fucking anything about his career other than we all knew the hits. But for some reason, like, that style of writing in his book it's so fucking good. I would highly advocate it.
Okay.
But I've been trying to get D to make it for years. I need an audiobook of D's book because it is singularly the best rock book ever written. I love D. Snyder's Shut Up and Give Me the Mic so much that I bought it for our crew on the tour that came out and gave them copies of the book.
Yeah. I just had him on the podcast. He's fucking awesome. I mean, talking about like all the shit that he went through coming up, it's just...
Now, D, of all those guys,
insane.
is somebody who really gave me practical advice because he had one-to-one comparisons. He had bottles of piss thrown at him at Donington.
Right.
He experienced, and I remember we did a Golden Gods. We did a Golden Gods where I was just filled with rage after the show, and he just sat me down and he's like, "I know exactly what you're going through."
He was at that Golden Gods, right?
Yeah,
This is the one, he was. I remember that. Yeah,
and he gave me direct advice on that kind of stuff. So I've always, and I still, I stay in touch with D, and D is just, I would say, of all the cool situations we've had where we've gotten to become friendly with our heroes, he is one that to this day, like, always is a source of a lot of knowledge and inspiration and information about what this life is. You know?
I got to say, the reason I brought up the Halford book is that, like so many of us had these images of what rock stardom was growing up, and we're going to be famous and it's going to be this and it's going to be that, and that book, more than probably any book, was just such a, like, it's really sad. Like, it's a really sad, tragic almost book, like he's talking about, they're fucking at the height, screaming for vengeance. They're playing fucking arenas. It's multi-platinum, and they're fucking killing it. MTV all over the fucking everything. And like, he's got to be in the closet. He can't come out. He's, he can't even like date somebody, because they can't get out. So he's like going and getting like glory holes and fucking truck stops and fucking. I was just like, holy shit! Like, it's so fucking, it's brutal. Like,
it's I mean, you can't imagine what he was going through in that era and having to keep all that stuff a secret. It's really interesting. I would say, and it's also, he's a really good storyteller, and he paints the pictures for you. So I would highly advocate anybody reading that as well.
Yeah, for sure. I read the Ozzy book too. I didn't really like the Ozzy book.
I have it. I never read it because it's like, I don't think he wrote any of it. You know what I mean? Like, I started reading it and I'm going, I don't think he wrote this. I feel like this is all ghostwriter, but
I was surprised too that like he was still on a lot of meds all the way like till like, very, very recently. I was like, wow, like it's harsh. That's pretty harsh.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I fucking love Ozzy to the fucking death. Black Sabbath's my favorite band of all time. It was just shocking. Everybody told me how funny the book was, and I just didn't, like my own, my mom was completely addicted to drugs until the fucking day she died. So like at the time I'm reading it and having this parallel going, oh my God, like I can't take this right now. Like I can't fucking.
Yeah, no, I understand that. There's been a few of those where, some of the books by some of these rock stars, I would read them, and I was going through so much of the shit at the time where I'm like, I don't know, this isn't very entertaining for me. This is more just like upsetting me about what I'm currently dealing with.
Like,
so I can
is this my future?
Right.
Do you ever think that? Like, is this my future?
Well, I'll tell you this.
You seem like you get a really good head on your shoulders.
This is a very definitive thing for me that really changed a lot, and it comes from a coffee table book that was meant kind of in a joking way. It was called like Heavy Metal, the Glam Years or something like that. And it was you remember the band Nitro, where they had the giant hair. Michelangelo Badio's got the guitar that spins.
Yes.
They're on the cover, and they're like if there was like a version of glam rock where it was like if you got superpowers, how you would look that much more glam. Like, their hair is like 40 feet tall,
right.
And they're like, it is like
them. We hated them back in the day. Just so
it's the thing where you go, I understand like, maybe why this had to go away. You know what I mean? Like it's reached the zenith. And I'm flipping through this book. They had it at the studio. This is our first major label record. We're making this record, and I'm flipping through the book, and occasionally I'd be eating lunch and I'd see it. And there's this whole section in the book where every page was, on one page would be a picture of a rock star from that era, and then the other page would be a big pull quote in large block letters. And it would be a picture of Kip Winger, and then the pull quote would be, "This shit's gonna last forever." And then you turn the page, and it would be Stephen Pearcy, and it would say, the gravy train's never going to stop rolling. We're going to do this forever. And then you turn it, and it's just page after page of all these dudes who, the joke, of course, of the book is, turns out that didn't happen. I remember reading that and being like, not me, baby. Like, I'm never going to have this level of hubris. Like, I need to bust my ass and never assume that I'm going to have a bunch of money forever or all this other stuff. Like, I need to keep working, keep hustling. And so to this day, if there's a fucking project that comes across my desk that I can do, I do it. I do everything I can to make sure that I'm always working, because I know that those opportunities can stop on the turn of a dime. Somebody can go, you know what? Now we're done with that guy. We're not going to keep giving him shit to do. And at that point, I want to be ready to be able to live a life where I'm not, freaking out that the gravy train stopped rolling. So that, I would say, of all the books that gave me a like, this is your future thing, it was looking at those dudes who were at the peak of their success thinking like, man, it's never going to stop. And then none of them saw Nirvana coming, and none of them saw that shit coming. And then it just blew it all up.
Right. You've got, you did the movie American Satan. You're doing Paradise City series now, right?
Yes.
And I mean, that's awesome. Like,
thank you. Yeah.
Acting and like, that's big shit.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really exciting. I mean, it just comes down to like relationships. Over the years, I had worked with Ash Alvinson, who wrote and directed the movie and then the television series, and I had gotten a good working relationship with him, and he wrote the
shout out to Ash. He's a nice guy, man.
Yeah, wrote the character with me in mind, and came to me in like summer of 2015 and was like, hey, I'm thinking about doing a movie, and I want you to be.
You guys weren't on Sumerian though at any point, were you?
We are currently, but we never were. We were with Universal we made one record independently, and then Universal bought our contract, and we've been on that for most of our career. Okay. So, and that is, part of the reason why in the movie and stuff, like, I couldn't use my singing voice in the movie initially, because Universal owned the totality of my voice for all the time that I was with them.
That's just weird. That's weird to think about it like that.
Yes, but if I opened my mouth to sing and somebody else recorded it, that was a Universal Music recording. So,
wow,
that's a whole other thing.
Now you're with Sumerian.
Now we're with Sumerian, and we're going to be doing season 2 of the show, and it's just look. I mean, it's just crazy. Right down the street from my house, there was a billboard when the first season came out with Amazon Prime series, my face real fucking big. Like, it's crazy as hell. I feel so lucky that I've gotten a chance to do all this stuff, and that people continue to give me opportunities. And my goal and my job is just to never half-ass anything. Always show up and do the work and give my all for things.
Yeah. I was listening to you, some interview, and you were just talking about how you were in theater, and you're doing that. And I was never in theater, but I always wanted to be an actor. Like when I heard all the stuff that was going on in your career, I was just like, wow, that's like, you did it. Like, that's fucking awesome. Like, I couldn't do it. Like I couldn't get there. Music, I got there, but like the movie thing, I just couldn't.
It's just opportunity. I mean, again, it's somebody said, hey, I wrote this movie with you as the lead character.
Which is crazy.
You know what I mean? Like
how flattering, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. Right. So like at that point, that's what I always say, like, people, I'll do press for that, and it's not music related, and they'll ask me about acting or my career, or what kind of projects do you have coming up? And I'm always like, well, I have kind of a unique story in that, I'm a musician who had this character written for me. So I'm just incredibly lucky to be here. And like, I always say when we did the movie, the bar will never be lower for me in anything in my life, because the crew and all these people go, the lead in this movie is a musician. Like, they didn't know that I had any experience. But when I showed up on the first day and like knew my lines and was halfway decent, the like expressions of everyone of like, oh, thank God. Like, everyone was like, oh, that's wonderful that you didn't fuck this whole thing up. So I've always said I'll never again in my life have the bar be so low for expectations of me. Like, when we did the series, they're all like, oh yeah, you got to do it. But that movie, the first day on the set of the movie, people were like terrified that I was just going to ruin it. Like, not necessarily Ash, but like, right. The crew people who were like, this musician guy who has no experience is the lead in this fucking movie. Like, so now at least I guess. Do you take
acting classes or anything? Do you go to acting classes to like prepare for this?
Yeah, I did.
I've had a couple of buddies who said acting classes are like the hardest thing you'll ever do in your life. Like,
very difficult. A guy named Tom Draper in the Valley here, who's famous coach, I was able to get in with him, and I worked the whole script with him before we did the movie. And then before we did the series, I went in with him for about a week and just kind of ran over my character beats. So I think it's important because it really is, it's like anything. You can take forever to teach yourself to play an instrument, or you can go to somebody really good who knows how to help you learn it, and then you can get to where you want to go a little bit sooner. It's just different methods. But to me, having the help was huge.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so just a week though, huh?
For the show, for the movie, I did like probably a month with him constantly, where I was going to his house all the time. But for the show, we did the show pretty quickly after the movie. But the problem was pandemic stretched that out. It took us about a year to film it because of different people's schedules. So the show was actually done and in the can long before it was released because of the situation with the pandemic. So now it'll be very interesting to be in a situation where we're going to be getting into episodic television where we're doing seasons and then they're released and then we're doing another season, hopefully. You know what I mean? Like, so that'll be a very interesting thing because right now I did a movie and then I shot a series and then I haven't done anything related to acting in like 4 years. So it'll be exciting when we get back.
What's easier, a series or a movie?
Certainly the series was not easier, but there was a comfort level because with the movie, we shot it so quickly and I had no experience. So doing the series, it's months and months of you get to live in this character. Oh, you're spending a lot more time with it. It's hour-long episodes over the course of 8 episodes, and my character is in almost every fucking scene. So it was a lot of time I'm spending all day and night here, and I'm reading these scripts, and I'm learning about what this character is and what these situations are. And I could walk into a scene knowing more about what I was doing and how it all ended up than with the movie where I was just like, I'm here for these number of days. Here's the stuff I'm shooting. Let's have fun. I'm going to try not to fuck it up. Whereas with the show, it was really more pointedly about the character development and trying to like really build something.
Yeah, I'm loving the long form storytelling of Amazon Prime or Netflix.
Yeah,
I love that. Watching a movie is weird now. Like I keep on thinking,
this is only this long. Like, where's the next one?
We're not just going to the next episode right now. Yeah, no, that's cool. Good for you, man. That's some exciting shit. And for a fucking dude who's about to have his birthday here, that's just fucking turn 31. That's fucking wild. It's awesome.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I feel very fortunate that I get the shot at doing cool shit. I got to be Batman last year. That was cool. So
what was that? What was that?
I got to voice Batman for an animated series called Dark Knight's Death Metal that Tyler Bates put together.
Oh, okay, right. I've heard something about this.
Which was, again, just bucket list shit. So, like, I feel so lucky that.
What's your Batman voice? What's your Batman voice?
It's so weird. Like, I did an interview recently, and they're like, "Dude,
you don't go Christian Bale." You're not like,
no. I honestly, honest to God, I tried to do it on an interview recently, and I literally couldn't because it's like there's something about reading the lines and seeing the kind of shit that he says. Like, it's very like, and being in this dark room with like, because Tyler would play all this because he scores movies, so he'd play all the score and everything, and then you'd be like, you just fucking feel Batman. You know what I mean? Like he'd be playing this symphonic, really cool lightning crash and all this shit, and you'd be like, ugh, and it's just coming out of you. So it was very cool. It was very, very cool.
Awesome. You want to give a plug for your new album?
Yeah, The Phantom Tomorrow. It came out at the end of November. It's out now. I love it. It's another concept record. It's in the storytelling milieu, and it's my favorite thing that we've done since Wretched Divine. I think it's a lot of fun, and the band is happier than we've ever been, and we really enjoyed the process of making this record together, and I think that shows on the record. We were just about done. I mean, I think after the 2018 record, we were I think everybody was kind of ready to call it. We weren't getting along, and that record really suffered for it, and I think we've really had a renaissance as a band, and we're just in such a good place, and the record is, to me, the like kind of fruits of that relationship.
Torch is a banger.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for being on the show, man.
Thanks for having me. This was a blast.
Yeah, this was awesome.
Maybe next time you got Downey on, you can pop me in and I can join and try to like steer some more Adam and the Ants conversation. We could do a quiz show. I'll host. You guys do God. Adam and the Ants trivia.
All right. I think I'm probably going to lose to him. Like, he knows
All right,
a
thanks
lot.
so much for having
He
me
knows
on,
a
man.
lot
I
about
appreciate it.
Adam and the Ants. Ladies and gentlemen, right there, the mighty Andy BIERSACK, Black Veil Brides, here on No Fucking Regrets.
No fucking regrets!
With Rob Flynn.